Note: I will be reviewing all 3 pathways of Fire Emblem Fates in this video, as there aren't enough differences in enough areas to warrant 3 separate reviews for this game. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy. Hello, and welcome to my review of Fire Emblem Fates, the 14th game in the franchise. It is split into 3 different paths: Birthright, Conquest, and Revelation. It was released in Japan in 2015, and was released out west in 2016, with a few localization and censorship hiccups along with the limited edition, special edition rather, selling out very quickly. It follows the massive success that was Awakening. Fates sold very well, and it didn't take long for it to reach the numbers that Intelligent Systems was expecting, and even surpassed Awakening in terms of sales figures. Many professional reviewing sites gave all 3 paths good scores as well. But from the perspective of someone who's played several games in the series that don't have child units or an avatar unit, how good are the 3 paths of Fire Emblem Fates? The story of Fates stars the Avatar, and the first 6 chapters of the game provide the setup for you, the player, to make the choice. Side with the royal family of Nor, where you were raised, but were abducted and taken to as a kid, or the royal family of Hoshido, your family by birth, the land you were kidnapped from as a kid. Oh, you can also choose to side with neither, but that's DLC. Without spoiling the story, I'm just going to tell you my individual thoughts of each pathway's storytelling. Birthright was rather lackluster, and very predictable in its storytelling, with the occasional cheap tearjerker inserted for some manufactured drama. It also feels more like good versus evil than most games in the series. Conquest was my favorite. Corrin is shocked by what he learned in his time in Hoshido during the latter part of the prologue, so he chooses to return home to Nor and seek the truth. In the process, he is forced to do King Garen's bidding along with his Norian siblings. They outwardly submit to King Garen, but over the course of the story, it becomes clear that they are aware that he's changed. They secretly plan to rebel against him after they conquer Hoshido. This was an interesting twist, as the player takes on the role of conqueror, rather than the prince-led army looking to take back their kingdom and save the world. Also, I felt the Hoshidan siblings were written better in Conquest than the Norian siblings were written in Birthright. Revelation was half and half for me. Here you get pretty much every unit from the 2 paths. However, there isn't much development on the part of the siblings in the main story. Instead, it is all put into the Avatar and Azura, the latter deserving it more than the former. In fact, the character building for the Avatar focuses on the fact that they are naive and very trusting way too much, and it detracts from the story. We also see some of the deceased parents of the royal siblings, but the former rulers are not given enough development, as it feels more like a cameo than the player getting a true understanding of the type of person they were when they were alive. In other words, show don't tell. In all 3 paths, Garen is by far the most guilty of the lack of show don't tell in the storytelling than possibly any other character in the entire series. In all paths, you're told how King Garen wasn't always a cruel and cold person who would even kill his own children if they disobey his orders. But the game never takes the effort to show this, and King Garen loses a lot of potential as a result, along with all of the villains that are pretty one-dimensional, just like Awakening. You'll get more world building from Birthright and Conquest, as they take place on the mainland, whereas Revelation takes place in the hidden kingdom of Vala. My opinion of the story from all 3 paths in general is that there are hints of potential, but these points are overshadowed by the Avatar, who simply was not a well-written character. And the main princes from both paths, and also in Revelation as well, they seemed like they should have been the lords instead, and the Avatar should have just been along for the ride. Really more like the Avatar from Fire Emblem 11, but that is my personal opinion. As far as the soundtrack is concerned, it's the best in the series without question. Each pathway has its own set of musical pieces that are distinct and memorable. Birthright is heavily East Asian inspired, Conquest feels inspired by Western European music, and Revelation does a great job of creating an atmosphere of a journey to a mysterious land. So overall, the soundtrack is fantastic. So many memorable pieces, Unlike most games in general where you have like 2 or 3, maybe 5 really good pieces, but the rest of them are just they just kind of blend together. They're not notably bad, but they're not notably good. Here, pretty much all of them are really good, and it feels like at times they spent more time on the soundtrack than they spent on the actual story, which is sad because from how well they were able to make this great soundtrack, it feels like they could have put that same effort into the story instead. But again, fantastic soundtrack. As far as the visuals of the game are concerned, I have the same opinion here as in Awakening. The only difference is that I feel that they improved the combat animations and added some weight to them, though they're not at the level of the GBA games despite a massive difference in hardware. I also enjoyed the CG cutscenes, although I think, again, this is another side effect of the Avatar being the main character. They were all from the perspective of the Avatar, and it was kind of like just this weird perspective in the cutscenes, which I thought kind of dragged them down a little bit, but they were still really, really good, and I really liked them. I just wish that they had been more just from a general perspective rather than them being from like the Avatar or from the player's perspective. It's as if they're like from a first person perspective, which is cool, and I know it's to reinforce that this is about the Avatar, and which as an extension is about the player, but I still would have wished they would have been more like the cutscenes in Awakening. But they were great though. As far as the gameplay is concerned, Intelligent Systems actually limits you this time around, with no more infinite reclassing with the second seals. Instead, they're replaced by seals such as the Heart Seal, which allows you to change your class based on the character's personality, as well as the partner and spouse, I believe, seals. The partner and friendship seal. Also, the child units are not broken in terms of growth rates, and the Avatar won't solo the game. The pair-up mechanic has been refined to a good degree, as now pairing units together only offers stat boosts to the leader, with the supporting character able to block any attack after the dual guard gauge is filled to the max. In order for dual strike to work, where 2 units attack in 1 turn of combat, they have to stand adjacent to each other instead, lacking the defensive bonuses granted by pairing units up. Reinforcements are back to being brought in prior to the player phase, much better than being brought in after. Also, weapons have unlimited uses, but have been majorly gimped. Some weapons, like the javelin and hand axe, cannot make follow-up attacks, and the wielder is more susceptible to being doubled. Silver weapons decrease skill and magic or strength, depending on the weapon, by 2 for every use, though it does recover 1 point for each turn. Only iron weapons and the legendary weapons have no drawbacks. Forging is back, although it requires 2 to the power of whatever level item you want of that same item to get the item that you want. So if you want an iron katana plus 7, 2 to the 7th iron katanas. What I mean by that is, so let's say you want an iron katana plus 1, you need 2 iron katanas. Okay, if you want an iron katana plus 2, you need 2 iron katanas plus 1. If you want an iron katana plus 3, you need 2 iron katanas plus 2. You can see where this adds up, and I don't know why the game even bothered limiting you to 7, because I don't know why anyone would spend that much of their resources just for 1 iron katana. And minerals are required for each forge as well, so it is a much more drawn out process. It's more or less discouraged, at least to a certain degree. Overall, they took the formula from Awakening and refined it, which I think is a good thing. However, the way they handled weapons was awful. Dragon veins are also a new concept, where members of the royal family with dragon blood, which includes child units who have a parent with dragon blood, can use the veins on spots on the map to alter the map. In Birthright, you get mostly boring open map designs, with the objective usually being to rout the enemy, same as Awakening. You also get an abusable world map. Conquest had by far the most interesting map design, and is the best among all games from Binding Blade Forward, at least in my opinion. Revelation, in a word, is gimmicky, imposing the Dragon Vein mechanic onto the player, which also kind of incentivizes using all of the royal siblings, as they all have access to the dragon veins. You also get an abusable world map in Revelation as well. So for my final verdict, I think that Fates is a good game. I like it a lot. It does a lot well. It also does a lot bad. Now, one of my issues with the community is that people say that they Pokemonized the game, and what I mean by that is that because they split it into 3 different versions, people assume that it's basically the same as if, like Game Freak when they have 3 different versions of Pokemon. No. These are 2 completely different things. In the Pokemon series, when they make 3 versions, it's basically the same story, basically just copied to each version, with the only differences being 10 or maybe 20 at most different Pokemon that you can get that are exclusive to each version, as well as the fact that there are, in most games, over 100 Pokemon that you can catch. So there's only about a 20% difference. In Fates, all 3 stories are different from each other. They are independent of each other. You have weapons that are exclusive to each version, except Revelation. Revelation has everything. But Conquest and Birthright are exclusive of each other. The map design, like as I mentioned before, the gameplay is different from each other. The story is different from each other. The soundtrack is different from each other. There are too many differences to say that it's the same as Pokemon. And it's not even close. It's way better. My playtime from Birthright was about 50 hours. Now granted, I may have been a little bit burnt out at first after playing Birthright, but playing Conquest, I felt that was a much better game. And then playing Revelation, I thought was a decent way to end the story from Fates. Wasn't as good as I would have hoped, but I think they still did a decent job with Revelation. If you have limited amount of money and time, at most, I would recommend Conquest and Revelation, as Conquest has a lot more to offer you than Birthright does. And Revelation obviously has the what most people consider to be the canon ending of Fire Emblem Fates. And again, the soundtrack in all 3 paths is great, fantastic. I would definitely recommend Fire Emblem Fates. Now, if you are in fact interested in playing all 3 paths, then go ahead and play all 3 paths. Just don't burn yourself out in Birthright. And Birthright can be a bit boring a lot of the time, so just look out for that as well. Overall, I think it is a good game in the series. I'd recommend Conquest more than any other. If we're talking really about, if you only have one game that you can buy from this set of games, Conquest personally is the one I enjoy the most, and is the one that I think that most classic Fire Emblem fans will go for. If you're newer to the series, then go for whatever you like, although Conquest will help ease the transition into the more classic Fire Emblem games. Alright, so that is it as far as Fire Emblem reviews go. Those are all the Fire Emblem games I have played up to date. And from this point on, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. Now, there are some reviews that I'd like to put up of games I played like a year or 2 ago that I had reviews up on a previous channel, but I just took them down because they weren't as good quality as I would have liked at the time. Luckily, I am able to do much better in that regard. So, really the plan now is to just kind of, figure my way through what I plan on doing with the channel in the future. In the meantime, I'd like to thank all of you guys who have watched, and I hope that I continue to provide content for those who enjoy what I do. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys have a good day. See you guys next time.